The broadcasts reached every corner of Earth. Holograms shimmered above cities and villages alike, voices of alien commanders reverberating in cold tones that carried both disdain and certainty. They called Earth primitive, its landscapes unworthy of a galactic stage. The wilderness, they said, was a relic that shackled humanity to an age of mud and beasts. Across the galaxy, these proclamations sparked laughter. To civilizations built upon sterile steel and seamless technology, the idea of war fought beneath dripping canopies and over routes that tore at boots was absurd. Yet on Earth, laughter never came. In hidden bases carved into rock and swallowed by jungle, soldiers listened in silence. Among them sat Captain Elias Ward, his posture rigid, his eyes fixed on the alien general who dismissed Earth as nothing more than a backwater of vines and predators. The general's name mattered little. His arrogance mattered entirely. Ward's jaw tightened as the speech continued, each insult toward the wilderness striking like a personal affront. He had lived in those forests, had sweated and bled within their depths, and knew what the aliens could not. The jungle was not weakness. It was endurance carved into every tree, patience coiled in every predator, and a strength that would devour those who mocked it. Ward's team gathered around him, their faces obscured by shadows cast from the flickering display. Lieutenant Anna Rivera leaned against the wall, her olive-toned skin streaked with dirt from the morning's training. Her eyes glittered with a sharpness that matched her words. They think technology makes them untouchable, but machines don't know hunger. They don't know silence. They don't know how the jungle waits. Her voice carried both anger and pride, her heritage rooted in generations who had learned to fight where the canopy never yielded light. Sergeant Darius Cole crouched near the doorway, his knife resting across his knees. His frame was wiry, scarred, marked by campaigns fought in places no map cared to name. Unlike Rivera, he did not meet the alien speeches with fire. He listened, calm and unreadable, the faintest smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "Let him come," he muttered. "Every loud step they take will write their death sentence." His words were simple, but the conviction in them carried the weight of a man who had survived by embracing the unforgiving. This was the core of the Jungle Special Forces, a unit drawn from Earth's most grueling terrains, their expertise honed not in theory, but in mud, in blood, in the constant awareness that the world itself could kill as easily as any enemy. Ward commanded with a quiet authority, Rivera carried the fire of belief, and Cole embodied the patience of a predator. Around them were 9 others, each an expert in survival, tracking, and silence, bonded not by nationality, but by a shared mastery of places most dared not enter. The central conflict came into focus with each alien broadcast. The Galactic Coalition was preparing to seize Earth's equatorial belts, convinced the jungles would fall like paper before their mechanized legions. They announced it as if it were a courtesy, warning civilians to avoid interference, mocking any idea of resistance. To the galaxy, Earth was already defeated, but within the hidden bases, the special forces prepared not for defense, but for demonstration. They were not tasked with holding territory or defending cities. Their mission was to ensure the coalition never forgot that the wilderness it scorned was more lethal than any battlefield of polished metal. Ward paced before the display, his boots sinking slightly into the damp earth floor. "They think the jungle's a cage," he said finally, his voice low but cutting through the silence. "But cages hold. The jungle doesn't hold anything. It consumes." His words drew the faintest nod from Cole, whose blade continued its slow rotation between scarred fingers. Rivera pushed off the wall, her eyes blazing. "Then we'll make them see it. We'll show them what it means to fight in a place that never stops fighting." The strategy sessions stretched into the night. Maps were spread across crude tables, marked not with neat grids, but with patterns of rivers, ridges, and dense canopy. Patrol routes of animals were noted as carefully as infiltration points. Rainfall patterns dictated timing as much as munitions. Every detail was tied not to human design, but to the living rhythm of the jungle itself. Ward demanded precision. Rivera insisted on aggression. Cole reminded them to let patience finish what bullets began. Together, they forged a plan not of direct confrontation, but of attrition born from silence and fear. When the first alien dropships tore through the atmosphere, the jungle itself seemed to shudder. From vantage points high in the canopy, Ward's team watched silver hulls split the sky, descending into clearings carved by orbital fire. Engines screamed, branches broke, and armored infantry poured into the humid air, their steps synchronized, their weapons glowing with artificial light. To the untrained, it looked unstoppable. To the men and women in ghillie suits, it looked like prey walking blindly into a hunting ground. Rivera whispered through the calm bead, her voice barely a breath. "They don't even look up." Cole's reply was as quiet as the rustle of leaves. "They're already dead. Just don't know it yet." Ward lifted his rifle, the crosshairs centering on a commander shouting orders. He did not fire. Not yet. Timing mattered more than instinct. Fear needed room to grow before it was harvested. He lowered the weapon slowly, his voice calm. "We wait. Let them build their camp. Let them laugh. When they believe they're safe, that's when the jungle answers." The hours stretched into night. Alien camps glowed with harsh artificial light, buzzing drones circling above like wasps. Yet the jungle did not yield. Shadows deepened, calls of unseen creatures echoed, and the air grew thicker with the scent of wet earth. From the cover of leaves, Ward's unit watched and waited, every breath measured, every movement deliberate. The conflict was no longer abstract. It was here, in the soil beneath their bodies, in the arrogance of soldiers who mistook silence for emptiness. Ward knew the galaxy's laughter would fade, replaced by something older and heavier, respect born of fear. He looked to Rivera, whose grin was a blade's edge, and to Cole, who sharpened his knife in steady strokes. Around them, the others blended into the living darkness, faces obscured, identities swallowed. They were no longer just soldiers. They were the embodiment of the wilderness, patient and merciless. Ward whispered into the calms, his tone steady, final. "This is our ground." They mocked it. Now we make them learn. The first rain began to fall, soft but relentless, each drop striking leaves like a drumbeat. The jungle was waking, and with it, the war truly began. The first light of dawn filtered through the canopy, a fractured glow that painted the jungle in hues of gold and shadow. Captain Ward lay prone beneath the broad leaves of a ceiba tree, his body indistinguishable from the earth itself. Through the scope of his rifle, he studied the alien camp. It had been raised with mechanical efficiency, a series of glowing barricades and sensor towers planted into the mud as though the ground itself were conquered the moment steel touched it. Yet already vines coiled around the metal. Insects swarmed over reflective surfaces, and the humidity had begun to fog the sensors meant to pierce the undergrowth. The jungle accepted no intruders without resistance. Ward observed the soldiers moving within the perimeter. They were tall, armored in sleek exosuits of gray alloy, each bearing the insignia of the coalition. Their movements were practiced, confident, and dismissive of the surrounding shadows. They carried weapons that hummed with caged energy, their steps synchronized as if rehearsed for an audience rather than adapted for war. To most, they would seem formidable. To Ward, they looked like children striding across a battlefield they did not yet comprehend. Beside him, Rivera murmured, her voice low enough not to carry. "They're slow in the mud. Every step is a fight." She had been timing their patrols for hours, noting where fatigue bent their posture, where frustration crept into their stances. She saw what arrogance blinded them to. The jungle was not an obstacle. It was a predator, testing them with every breath. Cole crouched a few meters behind, assembling a trap of sharpened bamboo hidden beneath damp leaves. His hands moved with methodical precision, his eyes never leaving the pattern of alien movement beyond the clearing. "They've got no rhythm here," he said quietly. "Everything they do is loud. Birds scatter when they pass. If you can't walk without waking the jungle, you're already dead." Ward adjusted his scope again, tracking a squad of aliens dragging crates of supplies through waist-high foliage. The crates sank with every step, their carriers grunting under the strain of unfamiliar terrain. Heat shimmered off their armor, condensation dripping as the jungle turned advanced technology into a burden. Ward's finger brushed the trigger, but he did not fire. Timing was everything. One bullet now would draw their attention, but not their fear. Fear required patience. For 3 days, the humans watched. They studied the patrols, marked every sensor sweep, learned the rhythm of alien meals and rest periods. They mapped the jungle's contours, cataloged the calls of animals, and noted how the aliens dismissed them as background noise. The coalition trusted its machines to interpret the world, but machines could not hear the shift in tone when a monkey screamed in warning or notice when frogs fell silent before rain. Ward's team listened to the living symphony, and it told them everything they needed. The first strike came at dusk. The aliens had grown comfortable, their camp glowing with artificial light that cast long shadows into the trees. Ward signaled with a raised fist. Rivera shifted into position, her ghillie suit blending with the brush so thoroughly she seemed part of the forest floor. Cole vanished into darkness at the edge of the camp, a knife in one hand, his body a shadow among shadows. The opening shot was a whisper, a single suppressed round that pierced the helmet of a sentry before his head tilted to yawn. He dropped without sound, swallowed by foliage. Rivera's second shot took another moments later, the body crumpling against a barricade before being dragged silently away by hands unseen. Panic had no chance to spread. Silence was their ally. Then Cole's trap snapped shut. A squad of aliens stumbled into the concealed pit, bamboo spears piercing their armor at weak points designed for flexibility. Screams echoed, but by then Ward's team was already gone, their silhouettes fading into the canopy. By the time reinforcements reached the site, only blood remained, and the jungle had begun reclaiming even that. The aliens responded with anger. They deployed drones to circle the camp, their lenses glowing as they searched the foliage. But the drones buzzed against branches, tangled in vines, their signals disrupted by the dense canopy. Ward's team moved silently beneath them, invisible to mechanical eyes. Cole grinned as one crashed into a tree trunk, sparks flying as beetles swarmed its casing. "Jungle eats everything," he whispered. Each night, the pattern repeated. A sentry vanished here, a patrol was struck there. Supplies disappeared, leaving soldiers hungry and confused. Fires sputtered and died as rain poured in torrents, drowning electronics. The coalition's commanders issued stern broadcasts, assuring their soldiers the enemy was primitive and cowardly, but the words rang hollow against the growing unease. Fear spread like mold in damp air, subtle and inescapable. Ward's team never struck without purpose. Every action was calculated to sow uncertainty. Rivera left alien helmets mounted on branches facing the camp, their visors shattered. Cole wove snares that left soldiers dangling from trees until their comrades cut them down, their screams echoing through the night. Ward chose targets that silenced leaders, leaving squads leaderless and directionless. The aliens began to fire into shadows, their beams of energy cutting trees in half, but each shot only deepened their paranoia. They fought the forest itself, unable to tell enemy from environment. Ward observed them through his scope, noting the tremors in their hands, the restless shifts of their posture. The arrogance of their landing had been stripped away, replaced with an unease they could not voice. On the 5th night, Ward spoke to his team around a muted lamp beneath the canopy. "They're cracking. They can't adapt." His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with the focus of a predator closing in. Rivera leaned against a tree, her face shadowed, but her smile sharp. They thought the jungle was harmless. Now it's eating them alive. Cole sharpened his knife, the sound soft and deliberate. Fear's the best trap. Once they're afraid of the dark, the jungle finishes the job. Their mission was not simply to kill. It was to remind the galaxy that Earth's wilderness was no relic. It was a force, ancient and merciless, shaped by millennia of struggle. The special forces were its emissaries, and they moved with the same patience and precision as the predators that prowled the undergrowth. By dawn, another patrol had vanished, leaving only shredded armor and claw marks the aliens could not explain. Their commanders whispered about beasts, but their soldiers muttered about shadows that killed without form. Ward listened to their confusion over intercepted comms, his expression unreadable. "They're starting to believe the jungle itself is against them," he said quietly. Rivera replied, "Good. Let them believe it." The trap was set. The aliens were no longer laughing. The wilderness they mocked had become their nightmare, and Ward's unit was only beginning to tighten its grip. Rain fell in sheets, so heavy it blurred the lines between earth and sky. The alien camp huddled beneath its shimmering shields, water cascading off in silvery streams. Yet even within their barrier, soldiers shifted uneasily, armor slick with condensation, weapons held too tightly. They had begun to understand that no shield could keep out what hunted them. Captain Ward lay concealed on a ridge above, the barrel of his rifle protruding through a lattice of vines. The storm was no hindrance to him. The jungle was always wet, always alive. Rain simply masked movement, softened footsteps, and gave cover to the patient. Through his scope, Ward saw the alien commander barking orders, its voice amplified by helmet speakers. The words were harsh, guttural, incomprehensible to most. But Ward read body language better than language itself. Shoulders tense, fingers stabbing at holographic displays, head snapping side to side. The commander was desperate. It gestured to maps showing zones marked for firebombing. The coalition was escalating. Rivera, crouched beside him, wiped water from her brow with the back of her glove. "They're going to torch the forest," she murmured. "They think fire gives them control." Ward's expression didn't shift. Fire eats fast, but it burns out faster. They don't know how quickly it turns against them. Cole's voice came softly through the comm bead. He was buried deeper in the valley, scouting near the perimeter. "They're dragging in heavy fuel tanks. Big ones. If we let them light it, half the canopy goes." His tone was calm, but Ward knew the weight beneath it. Fire could drive even the most disciplined unit from cover. It could turn concealment into a coffin. Ward considered for a long moment, the rain pattering against his helmet. "We can't let them. Rivera, pick your target. Cole, cut their supply line. If they want fire, we'll give them smoke." The operation unfolded like the jungle itself, quiet, inevitable. Rivera's first shot cracked through the storm, shattering the skull of a soldier perched on a fuel tank. The body tumbled, striking the valve, and pressurized gas hissed into the air. Aliens scrambled, shouting commands, their glowing visors scanning wildly for the shooter. Before they could respond, Cole's charges detonated along the supply convoy. The road buckled, mud swallowing armored carriers whole. Black smoke rose into the rain-soaked air, heavy and choking. The aliens panicked. Flames caught, but they were uncontained, whipped by wind and rain into a confusion of smoke and steam. Their shields distorted under the sudden heat, shorting out as circuits hissed. Ward's team retreated into the canopy, their forms dissolving in a shadow while chaos spread below. From their vantage, they watched the forest react. Birds shrieked and fled, predators slunk through undergrowth, and insects swarmed in disoriented clouds. The aliens had believed themselves masters of the battlefield, but now they were blind and coughing, stumbling into one another as their formation disintegrated. Ward spoke quietly into his comm, his voice like stone. "The jungle doesn't forgive mistakes." For 3 days, the coalition attempted to force order through destruction. Flamethrowers spewed rivers of fire, orbital scans burned away swathes of canopy, and squads in heavy exosuits trampled through rivers and ravines. But for every tree felled, 2 more concealed movement. For every drone deployed, 1 vanished beneath a tangle of vines. The more they fought the jungle, the deeper they sank into it. Rivera thrived in the confusion. She stalked through smoke like a phantom, her rifle singing once and then going silent again. Each shot sowed panic, forcing squads to retreat into kill zones where Cole's traps awaited. Cole, unflinching, used mudslides and falling trees to crush convoys, his knife flashing in close combat when opportunity presented itself. Ward held them together, his presence the steady pulse of the operation. His commands were precise, never wasted, his calm spreading like a shield across the team. Still, the aliens adapted in ways. They learned to huddle in larger groups, to build temporary clearings where foliage could not conceal threats. They pushed deeper into the forest, seeking the hunters who stalked them. But every adaptation revealed new weakness. Their larger groups made them louder, easier to track. Their clearings turned into traps when rains flooded them overnight. The forest reshaped itself each hour, and the humans had learned to shape with it. The aliens remained outsiders, armored and loud, trying to impose order on chaos. Ward knew the breaking point had come when they intercepted a transmission. Rivera patched it into their comms, her expression sharp as the alien commander's strained voice filled their ears. "We cannot hold this ground. The shadows kill us. The air itself suffocates. Request evacuation." The words were desperate, unguarded, and the panic in the background said more than any official report. Cole chuckled darkly. "Green Hell's got them begging already." Rivera's smile was grim. "And we've only shown them the edges." Ward did not smile. His gaze remained fixed on the jungle below, where the aliens stumbled through mud like figures already lost. "We're not finished. Fear isn't enough. We need certainty." That certainty came with the capture. A patrol strayed too far, drawn by false trails laid carefully by Cole. They followed broken branches and planted boot prints until they were swallowed by silence. The jungle closed around them, and one by one, they were eliminated until only their commander remained. Ward's team encircled the alien, ghillie suits rendering them faceless specters. The commander spun in place, weapon raised, visor scanning wildly. When Ward's hand gripped its shoulder, the alien froze, overwhelmed not by force but by the sheer presence of something unseen that had always been watching. They bound it in vines and dragged it to a concealed hollow. Rivera stripped its weapon with clinical ease, while Cole pressed a blade lightly against its armor, enough to make the creature understand its vulnerability. Ward knelt in front of it, his face hidden by shadow. He spoke slowly, though the alien could not understand his words. "This is our home. You are not welcome." The message needed no translation. The commander's trembling body conveyed everything. They released it deliberately, sending it staggering back towards camp. The jungle guided its steps, every noise magnified in its ears, every shadow a predator. When it finally returned to its soldiers, its broken voice transmitted the truth. The jungle belongs to them. That single phrase spread through the coalition ranks faster than any official command. Fear became doctrine, hesitation infected every order, and soldiers began to glance into shadows as if expecting death itself to emerge. Ward's team listened to the intercepted chatter, the crackling desperation of alien voices. Rivera leaned close and whispered, "They don't laugh anymore." Ward did not answer. He knew the war was far from over. Fear had weakened the invaders, but weakness was not defeat. The jungle had shown its teeth. Now it was time to decide whether the coalition would bleed enough to remember the lesson forever. Dawn broke heavy and red, the sun struggling through a haze of smoke that lingered above the canopy. The jungle was scarred, patches of blackened earth steaming where the coalition had tried to burn it into submission. Yet even there, shoots of green had already forced their way upward, stubborn and alive. Captain Ward moved through the damp air with deliberate steps, his ghillie suit dripping with condensation, his rifle steady in his hands. His unit followed in silence, 12 shadows in a world that had become their ally. The aliens were preparing their last offensive. Ward had seen the signs, transmissions filled with frantic orders, reinforcements funneled toward one final push, armor divisions deploying deeper than before. They believed sheer numbers would succeed where fear had failed. Rivera crouched beside him on a ridge, her dark eyes narrowed as she scanned the valley below. "They've brought everything," she murmured. "If this doesn't work for them, they'll have nothing left to try." Cole crouched on Ward's other side. Blade in hand, mud streaked across his scarred cheek. His tone was matter-of-fact, calm as always. "Good. That means when they break, they'll stay broken." He flicked his eyes toward Ward. "We're ready for this." Ward studied the battlefield below. Hundreds of aliens advanced in tight formations, mechs lumbering through undergrowth, drones buzzing overhead, artillery platforms dragged on skids across roots and vines. To an outsider, it looked like overwhelming strength. But Ward saw weakness woven into every movement. The mechs were slowed by mud, their sensors blinded by humidity. The soldiers clustered too closely, each step louder than the forest itself. Drones circled nervously, their lights betraying positions, while artillery platforms strained against ground that refused to yield. The coalition had brought its entire arsenal into a place that devoured technology and rewarded silence. Ward keyed his calm. His voice was calm, but each word carried the weight of inevitability. "This is the push. We hold, they break. No wasted shots. Make the jungle do the killing." The ambush began with sound, not gunfire. A chorus of birds exploded into the air as Cole's charges detonated, collapsing trees across the path of the mechs. The ground shook, roots and branches tangling around alloy legs. Before the aliens could reorganize, Rivera's first shot cracked through the canopy, piercing the visor of a commander at the front line. The formation faltered. Then the jungle itself attacked. Spiked pits hidden beneath ferns swallowed soldiers whole. Mudslides triggered by carefully placed charges swept through their flanks, burying machines in torrents of earth and water. Drones crashed into branches as swarms of insects, drawn by scent and light, clogged their sensors. Every movement the aliens made fed into chaos. Every attempt to advance dragged them deeper into a trap centuries in the making. Ward moved among his soldiers, firing only when necessary, his presence steady as stone. He directed them with hand signals, guiding fire to cut down leaders, to isolate squads, to keep panic spreading like a disease. Rivera worked with precision, each bullet finding the exact target to unravel cohesion. Cole vanished into smoke and reappeared where the enemy least expected, his knife flashing, his traps sealing paths of retreat. But it was not only humans who struck. As the aliens faltered, predators prowled from the undergrowth. A leopard burst from the shadows, its roar cutting through the clash of battle, claws raking across armor as it brought a soldier down in seconds. On the opposite flank, another cat lunged, muscles coiled with fury, its golden eyes burning in the haze. The aliens screamed, firing wildly, but every shot into the dark only deepened their fear. To them, the leopards were not animals, but spirits of the jungle itself, fighting alongside the faceless humans they could never catch. Ward watched from his position on the ridge, his rifle steady as he picked off stragglers. The sight of predators fighting in concert with his team was almost poetic, an image that would burn itself into alien memory. His men, faces hidden by ghillie veils, stood tall in the chaos, not as individuals, but as embodiments of the wilderness. Together with the leopards, they formed a tableau of primal power, a message clearer than any words. The coalition lines shattered. Mechs sank irretrievably into swamps, their crews scrambling free only to be cut down by silent shots. Squads broke apart, some fleeing into the jungle where no path awaited them, others clustering in desperation only to be crushed by falling trees or collapsing ground. The jungle consumed them, piece by piece, until discipline dissolved into panic. Ward keyed his calm again, his tone final. "Push them." His unit advanced with ruthless efficiency, striking from all angles, never giving the enemy time to breathe. Rivera's laughter, sharp and fierce, cut across the channel as she downed another commander. Cole's voice was steady, grim. "They're done. They just don't know it yet." Hours later, the battlefield was silent save for the distant cries of birds and the drip of rain from leaves. Smoke curled upward from wrecked machines, their glowing cores dimming as the forest began reclaiming them. Alien bodies lay scattered, already half hidden by creeping vines. Survivors stumbled away, dropping weapons, abandoning armor, their voices breaking over calms with pleas for evacuation. The mighty coalition, once so certain of its superiority, was reduced to fugitives fleeing from shadows. Ward stood at the center of the ridge, Rivera and Cole flanking him, their unit arrayed behind like ghosts emerging from the earth. The leopards paced nearby, silent now, their golden eyes fixed on the retreating figures. For a moment, predator and soldier shared the same stillness, united by survival, by dominance, by the quiet knowledge of victory. Rivera pulled back her veil, her face streaked with mud, her eyes fierce. "They'll remember this," she said. "Every last one of them." Cole sheathed his knife, scanning the battlefield with the cool detachment of a man who had seen too many. "Fear doesn't fade easy. They'll tell stories about this place. About us." Ward removed his hood slowly, his face emerging from shadow. His eyes were tired but unwavering, his voice steady. "Let them tell their stories. Let them warn each other. The wilderness they mocked is the wilderness they'll never conquer." He looked toward the smoking horizon where the last dropships lifted in retreat, their engines screaming like wounded animals. "And when the galaxy speaks of Earth, they'll speak with respect or not at all." Silence settled once more, thick and alive. The jungle exhaled, its dominance reaffirmed, its secrets intact. The special forces melted back into its depths, leaving no trace but memory. In the end, the war was not won by numbers or machines, but by patience, by silence, and by an alliance older than civilization itself.